We continue now at the top of Daf Ayin Gimel Amud Beis in Mesechet Sanhedrin. This is Sanhedrin Daf 73b. On the previous summit, the Gemara brought the source for the Brisa that in situations of a Nara Hamorasa or in situations of Mishkav Zocher, where a man is pursuing a man to rape the man, or if you have situations of rape of Chayve Krisis or Chayve Misas Bezdin, in all of those cases you're allowed to save the person that's being pursued by killing the pursuer. And the Gemara brought the pasuk of Ein La Na'ara Chet Mavis, from the word La Na'ara, which is spelled as Nar. That's how we learn the Mishkav Zocher case. From the word Nara we learn Nara Hamorasa. From the word Chet we learn Kares. And from the word Mavis we learn Misas Bezdin. And the Gemara is in the middle of saying why we need all of these psukim. And so the Gemara says if we only learned it by the case of Mishkav Zocher and by the case of Nara Hamorasa, so we would say it applies only there, Mishum Dahai Lav Urchehu, because in the case of Mishkav Zocher, when a male is pursuing a male, that's not a normal kind of relations. V'hakapagimlan, when it comes to Nara Hamorasa, so she's being degraded because she's losing her besulim, she's losing her virginity. Aval shar arayos, but by other situations of arayos, the orchaya, which might be normal ways of having relations, v'lo nafish pigmaya, when there's not so much degradation, so emalo, so I might say not. I might say that you're not allowed to kill the pursuer, and that's why kasav rachmana chet, that's why the pasuk writes the word chet to include even chayve krisus. V'ikasav rachmana chet, now if it just said the word chet, only the word chet, hava amina afilo chayve lavin, I would think any kind of arayas, even let's say it's a situation of just a negative commandment, chayve lavin. So kasav rachmana maves, that's why the pasuk writes maves, it has to involve the death penalty. V'ikasav rachmana maves, but if it only said maves, hava amina chayve misas bezdin in chayve krisus lo, I would say it specifically has to be the death penalty by court, but karis would not be enough. So kasav rachmana chet, that's why the pasuk writes chet, and that's why we include all of these various scenarios where you have to kill the pursuer. But the Gemara continues, v'lichtov rachmana chet maves, but why not just write chet maves, v'lo boy nar v'nara, then you don't need nar and nara, because automatically those situations would be included as well. Nara hamorasa would be included, the situation of Mishkav Zocher would be included, and the Gemara says to that, in hachinami, yes, indeed, that is true. It could have just said chet maves, we don't really need nar and nara, and so the Gemara now says, v'ela nar nara, so therefore what do we need nar and nara for? Again, the word is nara, but it's spelled nar. What do we need both of those drushes for? Chad lemu'ute oved avodas kochavim. One is to exclude somebody who's serving avodah zara. One might have thought that you're supposed to kill him, so he doesn't serve avodah zara. V'chad lemu'ute behema v'shabbos. And one is to exclude cases of bestiality, and let's say somebody violating the Shabbos. In both of those cases, you don't kill the person who is about to commit the avera. And Rashi explains, Chad lemu'ute avodas kochavim. One is to exclude avodas kochavim. The sal gadai dechamina teisi b'kal v'chomer. You might have thought avodah zara, you should learn out from a kal v'chomer to kill the person who's about to commit the avera. V'chad lemu'ute behema, and one is to exclude an animal, bestiality, mishum dedami le'arayos, that's similar to arayos. Now what about Shabbos, says Rashi, v'Shabbos kedei nakte v'agav grora. Shabbos is just being included here once we're already mentioning avodah zara and behema. Aidi detnan b'masnisin, since Shabbos was mentioned in the Mishnah, so we mention it here as well. Miu, but nevertheless, when it comes to Shabbos, krolo boy lemu'ute, you actually don't need a pasuk to exclude Shabbos. Because once you're already excluding avodah zara, mehechitesi Shabbos. Why would you think Shabbos is included? Halo salka daitan lasuya. You would never think to include it. Ela bechilol chilol me'avodas kochavim. The only reason you would even think to include Shabbos is using a gezer shav of chilol from avodah zara. Kedel kamon, as the Gemara will explain later on. And we will read the earlier Rashi as well. V'lo nafish pigmayu. It said that other cases of arayas, there's not as much degradation as there is by nara hamorasa. Rashi explains why that is. Ka'arusa, by a nara hamorasa who's betrothed, shechaviva v'yalis chen ala oris, so she's very beloved by her husband to be. V'yachshav misgana olav, and now already she'll be degraded before him because of the rape. Aval shara arayos penuyos besulos. But by other cases of arayas, even if we're talking about someone who's unmarried, even if we're talking about a basula, a virgin, lo mifka kuli high, but she's not going to be degraded to that extent. And likewise, let's say she's married, let's say she's already had relations, she's not going to be as degraded kamo arusa, like an arusa. And the Gemara continues, Rav Shimon ben Yochai, according to Rav Shimon bar Yochai, the Amar Oved Avodas Kochavim Nitan Lahatzila Benafsho. Rav Shimon bar Yochai says that someone who's about to worship Avodah Zarah, you are allowed to kill that person, you can save him, so to speak, with his soul. So we're not excluding Avodah Zarah. We don't need a pasuk to exclude Avodah Zarah. So lamali, so then we're back to our question again, why do we need these two exclusions, nara and nara? And the Gemara says to that, according to Rav Shimon Bar Yochai, chad lemu'ute behema, again, one is to exclude behema, that there you don't kill the person who's about to commit the avera of bestiality, v'chad lemu'ute Shabbos, and then one would be excluding Shabbos, someone's about to violate Shabbos, we exclude that case. As the Gemara explains, Sal Kadai Techamina, one might have thought, Teisi Shabbos michilol chilol me'avodas kochavim, what Rashi just mentioned, that Shabbos you can make a gzera shav. It says the word chilol by Shabbos, the word chilol by avodah zara, and just like by avodah zara, according to Rav Shimon Bar Yochai, it is nitan lahatzila benafshe. You can kill the person in order to save him from the avera. One might have thought the same is true by Shabbos, and so we use the pasuk to exclude Shabbos. And the Gemara continues, Rabbi Elazar Rabbi Shimon, according to Rabbi Elazar Rabbi Shimon, Diamar mechalas Shabbos nitan lahatzila benafshe. Rabbi Elazar Rabbi Shimon holds that someone who's going to desecrate the Shabbos, you can save him with his life, you can kill him so he doesn't violate Shabbos. Da'asya Shabbos mechilol chilol me'avodas kochavim, because Rabbi Elazar Rabbi Shimon does learn that gzeira shava of chilol from avodah zara to Shabbos. So Ma'ikol Meimar. So what are you going to say according to Rabbi Elazar Rabbi Shimon? What are these two exclusions? And the Gemara explains chad miyat lemu'ute behema. So one of the exclusions will exclude animals, will exclude bestiality. What about the second exclusion? V'idach, the other one, aidi the kasav rachmana nar, kasav nami nar. Once the pasuk's already writing nar, it's just a question of spelling. It spells the word nara using the word nar, so that we already do, but that's not considered extra. We don't need to make a drasha from that. And the Gemara continues at the two dots. The Mishnah said, Rabbi Yehuda says, Afa umeres hanichu lo shalo yihargena, even in a situation where she, referring to the Nara HaMorasa, if the Nara HaMorasa says, leave him, don't kill him, talking about the person who's pursuing her, who's trying to rape her, if she says, don't kill him because she's afraid that he's going to kill her, Rabbi Yehuda says in that situation, we would not be allowed to kill him, and the Tanakam of the Mishnah would disagree. The Tanakam of the Mishnah would say that you kill him in that situation as well, to prevent him from doing the Aveira. And the Gemara says, B'ma'ikom iflagi, what is the Tanakam and Rabbi Yehuda, what are they arguing about? Amar Rava says, B'makpedes al pigma, this is the case where she is concerned about her degradation, what's going to happen to her if she's raped. Umanichaso shalo yahargena, however, the reason why she doesn't want him to be killed is because she's afraid if we try to kill him, then he's going to end up trying to kill her. And this is the Machlokes Tanoim. Rabbanan Savri, the Rabbanan hold that pigma kapid rachmana, were concerned about the fact that she's going to be degraded. That's what the Torah is concerned about. V'harei makpedes al pigma, and this is something that she's concerned about as well, and so therefore we try to kill him. For Rabbi Yehuda, but Rabbi Yehuda says, Hai dekama rachmana katali, the reason why the Torah says to kill him, mishum demosra nafsha l'ktala, that's because she would give up her life in such a situation. She doesn't want this to happen to her, and she's willing to give up her life, and so therefore we kill him. But in this situation, lo mosra nafsha l'ktala, she's not willing to give up her life. She's saying that she's afraid she might be killed, and she's not willing to give up her life because of this degradation, and so therefore we are not going to kill him as well in this case. And the Gemara continues, Amarle Rav Papa li Abaye, Rav Papa said to Abaye, Almona l'kohen gadol nami, let's say you have an almona by a kohen gadol, the kohen gadol is pursuing the almona, trying to rape the widow, so there it's talking about chayve lavin, so they're also kapagim lo, over there also, isn't he causing a degradation to her, and so therefore in this situation as well, why don't we say that nitan lahatzila benafsha, we should save him, so to speak, from doing the avera, by killing him, by killing the kohen gadol. Amarle, so he said back to him, Apigma Rabba Kapid Rachmana, the pasuk is concerned with a great degradation. But Apigma Zuta, but if it's a lesser degradation, Lo Kapid Rachmana, there the Torah is not as concerned. And Rashi explains that Apigma Rabba could go in Arayas decreasus, meaning if it was something involving an Iser Kares of Arayas, Shein Chamuros, those are stricter, V'have Cherpasa Meruba, over there it's a greater shame, Shavlad Mamzer, because the child would be considered a Mamzer, V'nasa Zona Bevilasa, and she would be rendered a Zona. Aval Kohen Gadol be almana, but when it comes to a kohen gadol with an almana, eino nasa zona ela chalola, she doesn't become a zona, she only becomes a chalola, and therefore the Torah is not so concerned to the extent that we would kill the person who is pursuing her. And the Gemara continues at the two dots. We said earlier, chet elu chayve krisus. The word chet in the pasuk comes to include even situations of kares. And the Gemara says, Uraminu, we have the following contradiction. It says, V'elu naros sheyesh lahen kanas. The Mishnah in Ksuba says that these are the following young girls, there would be a kanas, a fine would be paid. Let's say someone rapes in these situations the girl, so a fine would have to be paid to the father. And one of the examples is Habal Achosa. One of the examples is if somebody has relations with his sister in a situation of rape we're talking about, the fine would be paid. And Rashi explains the question, Habal Achoso Kilomar, Afilu Bal Achoso, means to say, even in a situation where the rape is of his sister, Delo Karina Bavalo Sialisha, over there you would not apply that. In general, we would say in a situation of onus, in a situation of rape, that the person has to marry the girl that he raped, but that's not true in a situation of a sister. But it's saying, Afilu Achi, nevertheless, Karina Bav, and Nasanisha Shochevima, still we say that he has to pay that fine, this Rabbi Mikroy Bechsubas, that's included from Psukim and Ksubas. V'avagav dechayev kares. Now, even though a situation of achiyev kares lo miftar mitashlumin, now this is a case of kares where that really wouldn't exempt you from payment, that's why you have to pay. However, the question is, v'initan lahatzila benafsho, if we're saying that by chayve krisis you're allowed to kill the person who's pursuing the girl, you save him with his life, you kill him so that he doesn't commit the avera, amay mishalim, so then there is a question, why should the fine be paid? Hare misa v'tashlumin yeshkan, you have a death penalty, so to speak, over here, because we're supposed to be killing this person who's pursuing her, and then you also have a penalty of a fine, and anytime you have a situation of both a death penalty and a penalty of a fine, then we say that the payment of the fine, you don't have to pay that fine. V'avagav delo iktal, now even though in the end he wasn't killed, because in the end in this situation they weren't able to kill him before he committed the rape, but pater mitashlumin, still, since there was a liability to death, he should be pater from having to pay. Kedekaimelan b'chol chayve misas bezin shogegin, like we say by all chayve misas bezin shogegin, the nafkalan midatanya devechizki, let's say it was by mistake, so they're not actually put to death. We learn out, that's what we learn out over there. And so therefore, again, in such a situation, if there is a death penalty, or in this case, the person is supposed to be killed in order not to commit the Avera, that should be enough to say that there is no fine. Yet this Mishnah in Ksuba says that there is a fine. That's the contradiction of the Gemara that the Gemara is asking. And the Gemara continues and answers, Amru Rabbanan Kamei de Rav Chisda, the Rabbanan said in front of Rav Chisda, Mishas Hara, from the time of Hara, which is the beginning of the act of Bia, of the act of relations, to Pagma, at that point in time already she is degraded. So if at that point of time, if he continues that act of relations, you're not going to kill him because she's already been degraded. And Memona lo mashalim, when it comes to a situation of onus of rape, you don't have to pay the money ad gemar bia until the end of the act of relations, and so that's why at that point in time already you are going to pay the fine. Rashi explains, Mishas hara kari lo nivala, from the time of the beginning of the act of relations, that's called a situation where she's had relations. Ve'apegima b'miksa, she's already been degraded in some way. V'shovein matzilanos, at that point in time you don't save her anymore by killing him. Migmar bia benafsho, just from finishing the act of relations you don't kill him. Uknasa lo mechayvi ele mishum gemar bia, but the knas, the fine, is actually only paid at the conclusion of the act of relations. Shumotzi besulam, that's when she no longer has her virginity, and so therefore again that's at a later point in time. That's why the fine is paid. And Rashi continues, V'hai Gemar Bia lav dafka bias hamerek shumazriya dekra besulam kapid. When we talk about Gemar Bia over here, it's not exactly Gemar Bia, it just means to say we're concerned with the besulam, we're concerned with the fact that she's lost her besulam, dechsiv nara besula shelo rasa, el Gemar Bia dehacha hachnasas atarahi. The Gemar Bia over here is referring to the hachnasas atara, it's referring to just the penetration, but again, the point is that happens at a later moment, and therefore the fine has to be paid. And the Gemara continues and says, this answer is good according to the one who says, hara azu neshika, that hara is when the aver, when it touches. But according to the one who says that hara actually is when there is that penetration. And so therefore, according to that already, we would say it happens at the same time. So so what are you going to say according to that man da'amar? Rashi explains, again, according to the one who says it's just the touching, we could say that's already a degradation. She's called a ba'ula, she's no longer called a basula, she's no longer called a virgin, v'adayin basula lo yatsu, l'chiyuve knasa dechamishim, but physically, the basulim still haven't left, and so therefore, in terms again of the fine, that will come that moment later. But according to the one who says it's achnas zatara, that's what hara is, that's what's considered again essentially the degradation. Ugmar bia could go into shivcha charufa techsibah shechvasera hainu bias hameruk, so ein kan hara pegam below hotzas basulim. So now you're not going to have hara without also having hotzas basulim. It's going to be at the same time. V'nimtzu misa denitan lahatzel v'tashlumin bon kachod. It would come out that the moment where you're supposed to be saving her and the moment of the fine is actually at the same time. So you can't give that answer. So again, how can we explain the Mishnah in Ksubas where it's saying even in a situation of onus with one's sister, the fine has to be paid? Again, there should not be a fine. fine if it's nitan lahatzila benafsho, if you're supposed to save her by killing him, so then there's a death penalty, there should be no payment. And so the Gemara continues and answers, Elo Amar Rav Chisda, rather Rav Chisda says, what would be going on in that Mishnah in Ksubas? Kagon Shabal Shalo Kedarka. The case could be as follows. Let's say the brother rapes the sister Shalo Kedarka in the abnormal fashion, referring to anally, the Chazer Ubala Kedarka, but then he does it to her Kedarka in the normal fashion, so there already would be a pagam, so it's no longer nitan lahatzila benafsho, you no longer kill him, and then at the time that the fine actually comes, the fine would be paid. Rashi explains, Shabola hu oacher, it could be either him or someone else that had relations with her kvar already shalo kedarka, in a shalo kedarka fashion, in the abnormal fashion. The chazru bala kedarka, and then it was in the normal fashion, de lo nitan bebiya zu lahatzila benafsho, so this particular act of bia, you don't save her by killing him, shekvar nifkama, because she's already been degraded, so that can be an explanation of the Mishnah in Ksubis. And the Gemara continues, Rava says, another explanation of the Mishnah in Ksubis could be, let's say she says she wants to allow it to happen, she doesn't want them to kill him, because she's afraid that he's going to kill her. For Rabbi Yehuda, and we'd be following Rabbi Yehuda, because according to Rabbi Yehuda's Shita, in that situation we would not kill him, and so therefore it's not nitan lahatzila benafsho, there's no death penalty, so to speak, so the fine would be paid. As Rashi explains, Rabbi Yehuda damar lo nitan lahatzila benafsho, Rabbi Yehuda, it follows Rabbi Yehuda, who says that in this particular case, you don't save her by killing him, and we will continue with this discussion in the next video on Daf Ayin Dalid Amud Aleph.